basis of the briefing by Minister in the Presidency, Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. We will be joined by the sign language interpreters, Jonathan and Nomsa. They will interchange. Joining the Minister in your picture is the Acting Director General for GCIS, Government Communication and Information System, Ms. Nomonde Mnokwa. We had 2 meetings of cabinet, so the minister will be giving us the decisions that were taken. Let me take this opportunity also to welcome the 20 community media that are linked. Let me also welcome the 9 SADC countries that have joined us. You are all welcomed to this post-cabinet briefing in South Africa, taking place in the capital city of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality. Without taking much of the time, let me invite Minister in the Presidency to take us through this briefing. Minister, thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. As indicated, we did not brief after the cabinet meeting of the 22nd of July, 2025, because of other commitments. So the briefing of today, the statement of today, includes decisions of the cabinet of the 22nd of July, 2025, and yesterday, Wednesday, the 6th of August, 2025. On the issues from the environment, under Justice, Crime Prevention and Security, the Madlanga Judicial Commission of Inquiry. Cabinet welcomed the appointment of the Madlanga Judicial Commission of Inquiry into criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system, and the gazetting of its terms of reference. The establishment of the commission affirms the President's commitment to use constitutional processes to thoroughly investigate allegations of wrongdoing, uphold the integrity of our institutions, build public trust, and hold anyone who transgresses our nation's laws accountable. On crime prevention, Cabinet welcomed the intensified policing interventions through Operation Shanyela 2, which saw the arrest of over 17,000 suspects across the country between 27 July and 2nd August 2025. About 2,911 wanted suspects were arrested for serious and violent crimes such as murder, attempted murder, car hijackings, rape, house and business robbery, while 1,763 individuals were arrested for assault, grievous bodily harm. Cabinet further welcomed the arrest of 550 suspected of illegal mining from a mine shaft in Barberton in Mpumalanga as part of Operation Valam Godi, and noted that some of them have been granted bail, whilst another 50 is appearing today for bail. And the police have indicated those who are appearing today have other previous offenses on the similar area. On updates to Cabinet, My apologies. On updates to Cabinet, first is the framework deal with the United States of America. Cabinet received an update on the framework deal with the United States of America in light of the 30% tariffs against South Africa that are expected to come into effect today, the 7th of August 2025, with the provision that the tariffs will be reviewed as soon as the two countries reach a deal. Cabinet affirmed government's commitment to finding constructive and sustainable solutions through continued engagements with the United States of America, including at a presidential level. As communicated this morning through the presidency, President Ramaphosa has reached out through a phone call to President Trump yesterday morning as part of bolstering South Africa's negotiation efforts on the trade agreement. Government's efforts remain focused on growing the economy to save and create new jobs, which include intensifying diversification efforts and strengthening which include intensifying diversification efforts and strengthening our global supply chain integration as the country works to expand its export markets to Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and across the African continent to enhance our economic resilience. Specific to industries impacted by the tariff increase, and the Ministers of Trade and Industry and Competition and Justice and Agriculture, will brief on the details of these measures specific to the tariffs arrangement. I think by next week, Monday they are confirming. Specific to industries impacted by the tariff increase, government is focusing on demand-side interventions in the impacted industries and targeted interventions to ensure industry stability and safeguarding employment. These interventions include the establishment of an export support desk, which will serve as a direct point of contact for affected companies. Measures to assist companies to absorb the tariff and facilitate long-term resilience and growth strategies to protect jobs and productive capacity in South Africa. 3, a localization support fund for affected companies to contribute to the national effort, and the export and competitiveness support program, which will include a working capital facility and plant and equipment facility to address short to medium-term needs across all industries. 5th, the working with the Department of Employment and Labor on measures to mitigate potential job losses with the competition using existing instruments within the Department of Labor's entities that can be adjusted to respond to current challenges. Following consultations with the Competition Commission, a block exemption for exporters has been introduced to enable collaboration and coordination by competitors. A draft block exemption will be published by end of this week so that the process can be concluded expeditiously. And the information will be found on the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition website. South Africa-China Trade and Investment Package 2025 to 2029. The Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, in consultation with industry associations and export councils, compiled a South Africa-China Trade and Investment Package 2025 to 2029 as a basis for economic engagement with China. The package includes trade, investment, industrial development, and skills development. On trade, the priorities are on the exchange of top 100 products, establishment of a permanent expo in China, and cooperation to address regulatory measures. B, on investment and industrial development, the priorities are on investments in steel, tires, automotive, battery manufacturing, pharmaceuticals and medical devices, rail manufacturing, and the digital economy. On the skills development component, focus is on skills associated with identified sectors, priority sectors, including to service and provide aftercare maintenance. The package was shared with the government of the People's Republic of China during the working visit of Deputy President Paul Mashatile to China, which took place from the 14th to the 18th of July 2025. The Deputy President engaged with key Chinese state-owned enterprises and financial institutions, and also participated in the South Africa-China Investment Forum and the China International Supply Chain Expo, where he officially launched the South African National Pavilion to position our country as a gateway to sub-Saharan Africa for trade, investment, and industrial cooperation. On the national dialogue, the first national convention, Cabinet received and considered a report on the progress made to date towards the convening of the first of the two conventions of the National Dialogue to take place over the 3 days from 15th to 17th August 2025 at UNISA in Pretoria. The first convention is aimed at mobilizing consensus on the focus areas for the national dialogue that is planned to include South Africans from all walks of life coming together to define a vision for our country for the next 30 years. The national dialogue is planned to take place in over 13,400 ward dialogues, in addition to the 50,000 citizen-led engagements over the next 12 months from the convening of the first convention. The initiative has already seen an overwhelming interest, with more than 737 organizations from more than 30 sectors registering to participate, reflecting the strong desire among South Africans to shape their shared future. Cabinet reaffirmed that the national dialogue is not merely a platform for discussion, but a powerful mechanism for action, laying the foundation for a more inclusive and united South Africa. On the carbon border adjustment mechanism, Cabinet was appraised on progress in determining the impact of the carbon border adjustment mechanism on South Africa's economy, including in sectors or products covered by the CBAMs, as well as overall economic impacts, and consider a balanced set of actions and messaging that reflect both our developmental needs and commitments to climate change. Cabinet approved the implementation of a government-wide, multidimensional approach led by the DTIC, including partnerships with academia, private sector, and organized labor, to leverage on the decarbonization strategies and utilize both bilateral, multilateral, and other available platforms to lobby and campaign against CBAM. Biannual performance reports. Cabinet received and considered biannual progress reports on the implementation of the 2024-2029 Medium-Term Development Plan, MTDP, for the period covering October 2024 to March 2025. The MTDP outlines key priorities of the 7th administration, building on the National Development Plan and Statement of Intent of the Government of National Unity. The reports focus on 3 priorities adopted by the Government of National Unity for the period 2024 to 2029, namely, 1, an inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty and tackling the high cost of living, and building a capable and developmental state. The Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, together with co-chairpersons of cabinet clusters, will provide an in-depth briefing on the matter on next week, Tuesday. G20 updates. Government received an update on our G20 presidency preparations towards the Leader Summit. Approximately 80 of the 132 planned official meetings on the G20 calendar have already taken place. The negotiations of the ministerial outcome documents or declarations and related high-level outcomes have begun. South Africa has introduced the cost of capital review, which is a critical step toward creating a fairer global financial system that enables developing countries to invest in infrastructure, healthcare, education, and climate resilience. All the recognized G20 engagement groups have presented their work programs and priorities. The U.S. has indicated their return to full participation in the G20 meetings, albeit at a level of undersecretary. The following meetings took place in July: the 4th G20 Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting on the 14th and 15th of July that focused on 1, the multilateral development banks monitoring and reporting framework, 2, pandemic response financing stimulation exercise, and 3, update on the global sovereign debt roundtable. The second meeting was an emerging markets and developing economies, a deputies meeting which proposed that South Africa must continue to coordinate the EMDE meetings as a member of the G20 Troika next year. The 3rd Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meetings on the 17th and 18th of July 2025 that covered 1, international financial architecture, 2, infrastructure, 3, international taxation, 4, impediments to growth and the development in Africa, 5, sustainable finance, and 6, financial sector issues and financial inclusion. Also, another meeting was the 3rd technical meeting of the G20 Empowerment of Women Working Group from the 2nd to the 4th of July, which focused on advancing global dialogue and cooperation on gender equality and women's empowerment, with a specific focus on recognizing, reducing, and redistributing unpaid care work. Also, the 3rd Education Working Group meeting, which was held on the 2nd to the 3rd of July 2025, which focused on urgent need to supply sufficient teachers to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The meeting also discussed the draft G20 Education Ministers' Declaration. The 5th Health Working Group meeting from the 8th to the 9th of July 2025 that focused on strengthening global health security in the areas such as pandemic preparedness and response, as well as the need for sustainable health financing and equitable access to new technologies like TB vaccines. The 3rd Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group meeting from the 9th to the 10th of July that focused on addressing pressing challenges in disaster risk management and shared knowledge, strategies, and best practices for mitigating disaster risk. The 4th meeting of Task Force 1, Inclusive Economic Growth, Industrialization, Empowerment, Employment, and Reduction of Inequality, which was held on the 9th, from the 9th to the 10th of July, which focused on strategies to promote inclusive economic growth, industrialization, employment, and reducing inequality. And the 2nd Climate and Environment Sustainability Working Group meeting from the 14th to the 18th of July 2025 that focused on issues of biodiversity and conservation, climate change, land degradation, drought, chemicals and waste management, air quality in oceans and coasts. And lastly, the 4th Development Working Group meeting from 21st to 23rd July 2025 that focused on setting high-level principles for global public goods and investments, finding more money for development, and creating strong social safety nets for everyone. A Giyani Water Intervention Program, which Giyani is in the Mupani district of Limpopo. Cabinet received an update on the implementation progress of the Giyani Water Intervention Program. South Africans will recall that the Giyani water shortage has been a serious constraint from the 5th administration, 6th administration, and now we are moving in the from the 6th administration to the 7th administration. Our interventions are starting to bear fruit. In terms of the update, the Giyani Water Services Project, which involves the construction of 325 kilometers of bulk pipelines from the Giyani water treatment works to include service reservoirs to supply 55 villages in Giyani and auxiliaries. The overall project progress is currently at 90.23%. Pressure testing and commissioning account for most 90% of the remaining works. The project is envisaged to be completed by September 2025. The Giyani 55 Villages Reticulation Phase 1, which involved reticulation and household metered connections to 24 of the 55 villages. This project has 23 out of the 24 villages completed with reticulation and household connections. The remaining Risinga View village will be completed by end of July 2025, which means it has been completed. Phase 2A, which involves reticulating and metered household connections to 15 villages, will be implemented in the 2025-26 financial year, which is the current financial year, which ends in March 2026. In Phase 2B, the remaining 16 villages will be implemented in the outer year of the MTEF, which will mean 2026-2027 financial year. The upgrade of the Giyani water treatment works from the 30 is it metric? Oh, yeah. The 30 MLD to the 40 MLD and development of a number of well fields to ensure sufficient water supply to the 55 villages of Giyani is still at planning stage to be implemented in the 3rd quarter of the current financial year once the IRS is finalized. And this will be the last intervention by the Department of Water and Sanitation in Giyani to improve water supply to the 55 villages and the Giyani town. The progress follows on previous significant interventions, which included the Nandoni-Nsami bulk pipeline of 40.5 kilometer raw water pipeline from Nandoni Dam in Bembe, discharging into a canal at Shikukwani, and finally gravitating into a balancing dam at Giyani Water Treatment Works, which became functional on 5th of April 2023 and practically completed in December 2023, and currently supplies Giyani Water Treatment Works with an average of 15 million liters. The DG is very disruptive today. The bulk water pipeline from Nandoni to Nsami currently supplies Giyani Water Treatment Works with an average of 15 million liters a day of raw water. Parallel to this line is a 50-diameter treated pipeline which ends at Kwansami, Greater Malamulele, under Collins Ntshavheni local municipality, which was completed in December 2023 as well. The refurbishment of the Giyani Water Treatment Works to restore its original production capacity to 30 million liters per day, which had fallen to between 13 and 17 million liters a day, was completed in June 2024, meaning that we are now supplying 30 million liters a day to the Giyani through the Giyani Water Treatment Works. The completed projects costed an estimated 6 billion rands, funded by the Department of Water and Sanitation. South Africa-Nigeria cooperation on oil and gas sector. Cabinet was appraised on the outcomes of the technical working visit to Nigeria undertaken by Minister Gwede Mantashe of the Department of Mineral Resources and Petroleum to discuss cooperation in the mining, oil and gas sectors as part of South Africa-Nigeria Binational Commission, or the BNC. Nigeria seeks to develop its mining sector through exploration and production of its vast mineral resources and to leverage on South Africa's vast experience in the mining sector. South Africa has an interest in securing oil allocations and liquid petroleum gas (LPG) supply from Nigeria, and also to learn from Nigeria's vast experience in oil and gas exploration, given our next phase into the oil and gas exploration in South Africa. Cabinet was informed of Nigeria's commitment to finalize by end of August 2025 the commercial terms for crude oil allocations to South Africa that will enable direct access for South African state-owned and private refineries. Advancing the implementation of the reforms, which are the Operation Vulindlela reforms in the freight and logistics sector. Cabinet, the approval of the appointment of the regulator board, whose aim is to provide oversight over the transport economic regulator in its strategic matters to ensure the good governance and financial oversight. The TRE board will ensure alignment of economic regulatory principles across all modes of transport, inclusive of ports, rail, road, and aviation. The board will strive for streamlining regulation in promoting fair pricing with key objectives of protecting the users and boosting competition. The appointment will ensure that the statutory mandate is performed to the highest levels of its ethics and service delivery. The appointment of the board is key in the establishment and operationalization of the transport economic regulator as one of the government's priorities to support the reform agenda, which will improve the ease of doing business by consolidating and streamlining regulatory processes, automating permit and other applications, reducing cost of compliance, and it will create policy certainty, which will help to attract the required investment, particularly in the transport sector. The TER will ensure that the rules of the game are fair amongst both government and private entities. It will strive for the fair pricing to help to prevent unjustified fare increases in transport, to ensure the passengers get value for money. This will cushion the poor and the working class, who majority depend on public transport. This will contribute to the reduction of the money they spend on transport monthly. That will translate to a disposable income and affordability. The TRE board will have to ensure that the third-party operators to be admitted to the national rail network owned by the Transnet infrastructure manager are treated fairly and encouraged ownership of rolling stock, which will ensure predictable pricing for logistics and translate with long-term investment and investor confidence. This will assist the government in, this will assist in the government's strategic objectives of economic development and job creation, with multiple job creators in the transport sector. The movement from freight road to rail will be achieved where companies will shift bulk goods like coal containers to rail, therefore reducing the environmental impacts, preservation of our roads, easing our road congestion, and less accidents on the roads. The board will ensure balances to regulatory approach across the modes in discharging its fiduciary duties. This work and the appointment of the TR board is part of supporting the efforts done by the Department of Transport when they have invited participants in the rail network, PSP, and then also in the rail network statement that they articulated as part of making sure that our freight and logistics sector is solid to support our efforts on economic growth. Decisions of Cabinet. One is the accession to the AfriSim Bank Establishment Agreement. Cabinet approved South Africa's accession to the AfriSim Bank Establishment Agreement to attain full membership, unlock the full suite of AfriSim Bank's trade and investment instruments, financing facilities, and strategic partnership offerings in support of national and continental developmental priorities. South Africa, through the Export Credit Insurance Corporation, will transition to Class A shareholding, which will give the country stronger role in AfriSim Bank's governance, including influence over its strategic direction, structure, and leadership appointments. By acceding to the establishment agreement and becoming a sovereign member, the South African government unlocks AfriSim Bank's ability to deepen its export and investment financial assistance through the provision of funding, products and services to South African companies, commercial banks, as well as South African state-owned entities, and thus supporting exports and the reindustrialization of the South African economy. In addition, sovereign membership provides access to the bank's intervention facilities, often used to assist African member states and their private institutions wherever there is a market failure, global financial, economic, and geopolitical crisis. 2, on the 2026 budget process, the principles, guidelines, and calendar. Cabinet considered a proposal on budget reforms aimed at building a budgeting system that supports South Africa's developmental goals while safeguarding long-term fiscal sustainability. And Cabinet also approved the 2024-2029 budget principles and the 2020-2026 MTF guidelines and the 2026 budget process calendar. And the statement details the 2024-2029 budget principles. This is to avoid the situation that confronted us during the 2025-2026 budget process. So we have the same principles that will guide that process as part of strengthening the operations of the Government of National Unity. Quickly on the principles, government must put in place a robust and inclusive process to achieve an upfront agreement on a limited set of strategic budget principles, which are the fiscal framework, taxation, debt financing, key infrastructure investment, key spending priorities, and areas to cut spending and measures to grow the economy. Evidence-based, outcomes-focused, and data-informed budget decisions. The third one is integrated planning, prioritization, and budgeting. And fourth, budget decision must be forward-looking and medium term in orientation. Fifth, the budget process must be structured, time-bound, and rules-based, meaning that you cannot change along the way. And a budget decision must be sequential and respected as part of maintaining the effectiveness of the budget processes. And lastly, the MTF guidelines reaffirm government's commitment to a more disciplined, transparent, and strategically aligned budget process that supports South Africa's long-term fiscal objectives and national development plans. And this principle are also articulated in the PFMA, the Public Finance Management Act, and these are structured so that all of us can be on the same wavelength. The third decision is South Africa's second draft nationally determined contribution, NDC, to the global response to climate change as required by the Paris Agreement. Cabinet approved the publication of the nationally determined contribution for consultation. The second NDC proposes the greenhouse gas emissions target range of 320 to 380 metric tons of carbon dioxide by 2035. The finalization of the second NDC gives effect to South Africa's international commitments and obligations in relation to global effect on climate change and ensuring a just energy transition towards a low-carbon economy and society. Government undertook a technical analysis of the country's likely greenhouse gas emissions pathways up to 2035, as well as an analysis of South Africa's legal obligations under the Paris Agreement and Rulebook, and the country's planned renewable energy capacity for 2035, and the National Energy Efficiency Strategy and the Integrated Resource Plan. The nationally determined contribution has been published by the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment through their website, which is www.ppe.gov.za. Report on Ministerial Roundtable, Natural Diamonds, Challenges and Opportunities. The South African diamond industry is a significant player within the global diamond and jewelry industry, and it contributes substantially to the national economy. However, the global diamond industry continues to experience extreme challenges due to macroeconomic factors, and consequently, Cabinet granted approval to the Department of Mineral Resources and Petroleum to participate in international agreements that enable diamond-producing governments to be better positioned to promote and market natural diamonds globally. For this to be realized, Cabinet has further approved that the diamond industry be requested to contribute 1% of their annual revenues generated from rough diamond sales to support marketing of South Africa's real or original diamonds to enable global growth and job creation. The Department of Minerals, Resources and Petroleum will consult with the industry in terms of the contribution arrangements. Removal of the repeal of the South African SAA, State-Owned Company Limited Bill from the legislative program. Cabinet approved the request to table for withdrawal of the South African Airways SOC Limited Bill from the legislative program of Parliament. The Sale and Purchase Agreement and the repeal of the SAA Act 5 of 2007 was condition precedent that the World Department of Public Enterprise was required to fulfill for the transaction to be made. The bill was tabled in April 2025. The bill was tabled in Parliament, in 25 January 2024. However, on 14th March 2024, termination of the transaction was announced following the collapse of the negotiations between the parties. Consequently, the termination of the agreement rendered all outstanding conditions inter alia, the repeal of the SAA Act 5 of 2007, 2017, unimplementable. Hence, the request for the withdrawal of the bill from the legislative program of Parliament. On bills, Water Services Amendment Bill, Cabinet approved the submission of the Water Services Amendment Bill to Parliament. The bill aims to strengthen the regulation and management of water services as well as improve compliance with the Water Services Act of 1997. The amendments to the Water Services Act introduces reforms to address the non-separation of water services authorities and water services providers' functions by municipalities by providing greater clarity regarding the functions of each, address poor performance by the water services providers by introducing a legal requirement that water services authority may only appoint water service providers that have an operating license which requires a minimum level of competency issued by the Department of Water and Sanitation. The amendments will also address weaknesses identified in the sector, including introduction of offenses for non-compliance, norms and standards for intervention, and minimum standards for the functioning of water services providers, which must be enforced by Water Services Authority. They will ask, what is the mischief we are trying to address? Is then a poor performance of water service providers that is resulting in the shortages of water across many municipalities in the country. The National Water Amendment Bill, Cabinet approved submission of the National Water Amendment Bill to Parliament. The bill amends the National Water Act of 1998. These amendments will improve regulations and will ensure that the country's water resources are well managed, protected, and conserved. The bill also makes proposals to eliminate the imbalances of the past relating to water allocation and also gives effect to Section 27 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa by making provisions to enhance protection of the country's water resources. And lastly, the Draft Children's Amendment Bill. Cabinet approved publication of the Draft Children's Amendment Bill for public comments. The bill aims to update and strengthen the existing Children's Act of 2005, focusing on several key areas such as weaknesses and inadequacies in the child care and protection system across an array of services ranging from prevention, early intervention, statutory alternative care, reintegration, and aftercare services. The bill also seeks to strengthen mechanisms to further protect children against violence, mistreatment, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. On appointments, all appointments are subject to the verification of qualifications and relevant clearances. Cabinet approved the appointment of Dr. Cynthia Ntombifuthi Khumalo as the Director General of the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. Approved the appointment of Dr. Sipho Ngomane as the Deputy Director General, Corporate Management at the Department of Tourism. Approved the appointment of Ms. Yanga Ntombizodidi Tansi as the Deputy Director General, Integrated Cooperatives and Micro-Enterprise Development in the Department of Small Business Development. Approved the appointment of Mr. Vuyisa Africa Daile as the Deputy Director General, Sector Policy and Research in the Department of Small Business Development. Approved the appointment of Dr. Nonhlanhla Ignatia Ndlovu as the Deputy Director General, HIV/AIDS, TB in the Department of Health. Approved the appointment of government trustees to the Tirisano Construction Fund Board, who are Professor Wellington Didibu Gutwala, Ms. Alison Lawless, Dr. Msizi Reginald Mieza, and Ms. Zukiswa Kimani. Appointment of members to the National Housing Finance Corporation Board, Mr. Khalid Desmond Golding as chairperson, Ms. Balungile Siphumelele Dlungwane, Mr. Tulani Siyabonga Mabaso, Ms. Jacqueline Ramatsimela Maisela, Ms. Aisha Sidat, Ms. Alison Hiki Changana, Ms. Nomzamo Babekile Hlengiwe Khumalo, Advocate Ntokozisi Daluxolo Xulu, Ms. Tsepiso Flora Kobile, Mr. Veli Cecil Dube, Ms. Noluthando Khulukazi Masholoku, and Mr. Rapo Satish. The filling of vacancies on the Community Schemes Ombud Service Board, the appointees are Ms. Busisiwe Nwabi Sanzo as a chairperson, Ms. Sarah Madinoche Litsi, and Ms. Mognambal Karen Muthen, and Mr. Nduduzi Ovel Skhumbudzo Zungu. The filling of vacancies in the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authorities Board, Ms. Manari Evelyn Mamabulo, and Ms. Miriam Mapule Mashiteng, Mr. Lishabe Samuel Rampedi, and Mr. Thomas Korombi Sigit. The filling of a vacancy on the board of the Housing Development Agency, Mr. Malisela Phineas Sibajana. The appointment of members of on the South African Airways Board, SAA. I'm looking whether the amendment that needed to be done has been done. Ms. Sedzani Faith Mudau as the chairperson, Ms. Fatima Geni as the deputy chairperson, Mr. Tienas Potgieter, Mr. Ngomezi India, Mr. Dennis Thokozani Dlomo, Ms. Pamela Bulelwa Yako, Ms. Bongiwe Pichi, Dr. Salume Shilwane Mwabuze, Dr. Pritish Dala, Mr. Lisa Manu, Ms. Bongiwe Mbovu, Ms. Phumelele Dlungwane, Advocate Johannes Colin Wepont, Professor John Lamula, who's the CEO and member of the board by that position, and Ms. Lise Oliskif, who's the CFO. Appointment of the non-executive directors to the Transport Economic Regulator, the board that we spoke about earlier. And this appointment, as indicated earlier, is part of enabling the implementation of the Operation Vulindlela reforms in the freight and logistics sector. We're starting with Ms. Ethel Jevu tells you as the chairperson, Ms. Balibebechi Zondi, Ms. Fatima Bibi Sheikh, Mr. Lucky Tekisho, Mr. Vincent Belenis, and Mr. Rivanda Nair. The non-executive directors in the interim board of the Road Accident Fund, Mr. Kenneth Brown as the chairperson, Ms. Nontlantla Mabusela Akwere as the vice chairperson, Ms. Ntswaki Kutumela, Ms. Innocentia Mule Pule, Mr. Richard Janki, Mr. Mpochane Alfred Mkipeni, Mr. Neshi Balton, and Ms. Alfredina Ntina Temba. Upcoming events: Women's Day. The country will commemorate the 2025 National Women's Day on the 9th of August at the Nkowankowa National Stadium in Zanin in Limpopo. This year's commemoration takes place under the overarching theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, which aligns with South Africa's presidency of the G20 and its commitment to the principles of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. This year's program emphasizes advancing women's participation in leadership and economic life, promoting financial inclusion, and confronting gender-based violence and femicide as a critical barrier to women's empowerment. Women's Month is not only a celebration to honor the resilience and the contribution of women in all their diversity, but a call to action to ensure women's full and equal inclusion in shaping South Africa's future. The JCPS GBV Awareness and Prevention Activation in Bizo. The Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster will host a gender-based violence and femicide awareness and prevention activation in Bizo on the 8th of August in Gapane in Limpopo. The activation will bring together government departments, civil society, traditional leaders, and local community to raise awareness and strengthen community response to the scourge of GBV. The Africa Investment Summit. Cabinet gave approval for South Africa to host the African Union Water Investment Summit in Cape Town from the 13th to the 15th of August 2025. The summit will bring together heads of state and government, African ministers of water, G20 member states, investors and private sector policymakers, academics, international organizations, and related sectors to exchange views on the challenges of water provision, funding for water infrastructure, and water investment on the continent. The summit is aligned to the G20 goal of increasing the quality and quantity of climate finance flows to developing countries by mobilizing investments for water security and resilience, as well as sustainable sanitation. Rand Water's Zuckerbosch Water Purification Works Plant. President Ramaphosa will launch Rand Water's Zuckerbosch Water Purification Works Plant near Vereeniging on the 8th of August 2025. It is the biggest state-of-the-art water purification plant in Africa and aims to augment the current water supply capacity of Rand Water and contribute to the water security of Gauteng. Messages, condolences. Cabinet expressed condolences to the friends and families of the government of Nigeria and its people following the passing of the country's former president, President Muhammadu Buhari. President Buhari's leadership brought our two nations closer together and contributed to Africa's collective growth and development. Ms. Tracy Brown, a regional court prosecutor attached to the New Brighton Magistrate Court in Gqeberha, who was brutally murdered in front of her house. Her murder is an attack on the rule of law and our tireless efforts to hold criminals accountable. Renowned journalist and executive editor of the Sowetan newspaper, Pearl Sebulao, whose journalism career spans over 2 decades. Veteran actress and comedian Mehmet Ditsecho, whose illustrious career spanned television, theater, and film. Renowned entrepreneur, designer, and co-founder of the multi-award-winning Sun Goddess fashion label, Ms. Vanya Mangaliso, who internationally branded South African clothing products and made our traditional attires very fashionable. We'll also want to extend our condolences to the government of Ghana for the tragedy that took place when their helicopter crashed with a number of government ministers on the flight. This happened so recently. Congratulations. We extend a cabinet's congratulations to and well wishes to Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, who has been appointed as the TBT Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa. Justice Mlambo previously served as the Judge President of Gauteng Division of the High Court and has consistently demonstrated a steadfast commitment to the independence of the judiciary, access to justice, and the transformation of the legal system. Dr. Mafu Rakometsi, CEO of the Umalusi Council, on his appointment as the President of the International Association for Education Assessment, continuously demonstrating South Africa's leadership in the education sector. To Team South Africa for a spectacular performance at the 2025 FICU World University Games in Germany. Team South Africa ended the Games with a total of 19 medals, which included 6 gold, 5 silver, and 8 bronze. You cannot miss out in those contributions. Bayanda Walaza, South Africa's 100-meter and 200-meter gold sensation. South Africa's men's 4x4 relay team, which consisted of Bayanda Walaza, Retsidisitswe Mlenga, Kyle Zinn, Mtim Timkulu, who also won silver. Laith Pillay, who won gold in the 400 and was also part of the 4x400 mixed relay, which claimed silver. Adrian Smith, who won gold in the men's shot put by overtaking the field with his 6th and final attempt. Peter Kotsie, who captured 2 gold medals in the men's 50-meter and 100-meter backstroke. He also won gold and 2 silver medals at the World Aquatic Championship in Singapore. So we're coming back in the swimming front. Team South Africa also for their stellar performance at the 2025 African Under-18 and Under-20 Championships in athletics held in Abeokuta in Nigeria. Team South Africa won gold, silver, and bronze medals across various disciplines. If I mention, I'll be mentioning the same names. Zakiti Nene for winning bronze in the 400-meter at the London Diamond League. Retsedisizwe Mlenga for achieving World Championship 100-meter standard in Austria. South Africa's Under-20 team, the Junior Springboks, for winning World Rugby Union Championship in Rovigo, Italy. Aldrich Potgieter for securing his first PGA Tour title at only 20 years of age by winning the 2025 Rocket Classic at the Detroit Golf Club in the USA. The South African cricket legends for winning the final of the World Championship at the Legends in Birmingham, England. The Red Hill School for making history by becoming the first South African school to win the Under-17 World Schools Netball Cup. The SABC News Service for marking 75 years of service to the nation. And also to South Africa for being confirmed as the official venue for the 2026 Live Golf Tournament. And who's better to do it when we are emerging with Aldrich Potgieter, a major international sporting event that will be staged in Gauteng, South Africa for the first time in May 2026. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the comprehensive feedback of the 2 cabinet meetings that took place. But also thank you very much for the update on the South African position on current events. I will start by inviting questions, firstly in the Imbizo Center, and later on we will check the online questions. The drill is the same. Next to where you're seated, check there is a knob there. You'll press it, it will indicate red, and you'll speak on the mic. Let me recognize the hands in this order. I recognize your hand, second, third, fourth, in that order.
Good morning, Minister. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's Natasha Free here from SABC News. Minister Ntshavheni, I have a number of questions. First
first and foremost, you mentioned that President Cyril Ramaphosa had a telephone discussion with U.S. President Donald Trump. Can we have a detailed, perhaps, explanation as to what the content of the telephone discussion was? Yes, we do understand it was around trade matters, but was there any agreements made? And then, does this mean that the door for negotiations is still open despite the looming deadline at 12 a.m. Tomorrow morning? And then, secondly, you mentioned that, yes, Minister Parkstow will give a detailed explanation in terms of the economic support packages, but which sector will government firstly focus on? Or what sectors, which sectors would government actually focus on? Secondly, or thirdly, government has indicated that 30,000 jobs would be on the line as a result of the tariffs. Is this still the case, or will the relevant departments perhaps do a modeling on the impact on jobs? And then, Parkstow, the minister, had indicated that trade talks with various markets in countries like Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas are at an advanced stage. As cabinet, could you please indicate how soon actual trading with these companies will begin with? And yesterday, I don't know if you've seen it on the SABC, but our colleague Lucy Porade, they had actually spoken to one of the exporters in the Western Cape and indicated that the support packages that they are receiving are not sufficient. Perhaps your comment on that. And then lastly, this is from my colleague Untanta, who's doing a story about the weather. Government has actually issued a call to residents to remain vigilant after the South African Weather Service had issued a yellow level 3 warning. Perhaps your comment on that. Thank you, and apologies for the many questions.
Can we do those questions and then come back?
Okay. No, thank you very much, Natasha. You took time. Maybe let's give Minister an opportunity to respond, and then we'll go to the other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. To the SABC, when we say ministers will brief, we want to save us from dealing with the details on areas that are not areas of our expertise. Let me start with the easier with the easier ones. The president and call to President Trump, it was part of supporting our negotiation effort, and he continues to engage to make sure that there is room for negotiation. And those that there cannot be agreement on a phone call. The technical team must do the actual work, and there's always room for negotiations. We have indicated that to say there is room for negotiations. The sectors that are affected, it's a number of sectors, but primarily is the automotive and the agricultural sector. But other sectors are also involved. Impact on the 30,000 jobs, yes, there was an indication of an impact on 30,000 jobs, but the interventions that I read through, which we'll repeat, are part of the aim to mitigate against those job losses, including the diversification to the other markets. You indicated how soon will the diversification to other markets take place. They've been taking place in the agricultural sector. Minister Steenhuisen will give the details during the briefing. In the agricultural sector, we found markets in China, for instance, for other products. He'll give the detail of the product list that are being redirected. But also, it's not only about redirecting; it's also complementing the market supply. We would prefer to keep both the American market and our other markets, and also diversify to new entries. And you say there's a person who said the package is not sufficient. Yes, the package could not have been sufficient. We just indicated that cabinet approved the interventions yesterday, so those packages will be sufficient or will go a long way. They can never be a complete certification over a short-term period. There will be short-term mitigation to make sure that the production capacity is maintained and jobs are saved. And jobs saved may It may not necessarily mean everything, but in the medium to long term, we want to make sure that we maintain those jobs or create more jobs in that field. I don't know if you want me to read again the package of supply, but the details will be in the statement, which we'll share immediately after this briefing, so that we don't have to read everything. You've indicated the weather condition. Yes, we continue to plead with South Africans to make sure that in particular, because the areas that are affected and the prediction of snow is in areas like in Gauteng, including Pretoria, which is, I always argue that Pretoria is part of Limpopo because of the weather patterns, and now they are affected by this terrible weather. And in these harsh conditions, we want South Africans, where it's not necessary to move from your house, from your homes, we want you to stay at home and stay under shelters. Those who are less privileged and do not have shelters, they must go to place of safety across their provinces, across their municipalities, so that we prevent any loss of life. We'll take the next set of questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We proceed in that order.
Good morning, Minister. My name is Zoleka Kodashi from Newsroom Africa. I noted that you cautiously avoided Natasha's question about watching the SABC. You hope that you were watching Newsroom Africa instead.
Is it War of the Airwaves?
Minister, I just want to piggyback on that question that was asked by Natasha about the nature of the discussions between President Cyril Ramaphosa and US President Donald Trump. We just want to get the specifics. Is it possible to highlight what exactly the nature of those negotiations will be? Is there a timeline for these negotiations to take place? Because time, as you know, Minister, is not on our side. Two, I wanted to ask about reports about a Russian ship that was refused entry in Cape Town to dock there and replenish to refuel and replenish its supplies. Are you aware of that, Minister? And can we just get a response? Thank you.
Thank you.
Minister Puleli Treaty Jones from ENCA. Just given the situation in Barberton, I know you've been really critical of the illegal mining happening in the country. Is government concerned about the situation and the dangers it possesses to South Africa's sovereignty? What happens next in this particular manner? And just a question to my colleague who's in the Western Cape as well regarding what we're seeing at IBT with the CEO Tebogo Malaka as well, allegedly attempting to bribe a journalist. Just your view on this, and how is this discrediting efforts to bring stability and good governance to the entity? That's two. And then lastly, Minister Ronald Lamola has confirmed that South Africa's special envoy to the US, Service Jonas, has not set foot in the US in an official capacity. What's the update on this, if you have any? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bloomberg News. Just a few questions. I think the one linked to Natasha's one. There is a sentence in this statement that speaks to the provision that tariffs will be reviewed as soon as the two countries reach a deal. Does that mean that the U.S. administration has indicated that there is scope to review the 30% that South Africa currently has? I just want to be clear if that is what that sentence means. And then secondly, on the G20, where you speak of a return of participation from the U.S. So is this confirmation that the U.S. had in fact withdrawn from participation? And when you say undersecretary, are you referring to the foreign ministry on that side, Marco Rubio's undersecretary, or who in specific are you referring to? And then the last one is with regard to the timing of the China trade deal. Is this part of diversifying markets and bolstering current trade relations to offset what we would have lost in terms of the U.S. relations, or is it just something that is the normal course of business? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Before we go to the online ones.
Thank you for the questions. So we watch Newsroom, SABC, ENCA across, and also the community TV stations. That way. Actually, it's in the order of SABC, ENCA, and Newsroom, the order of establishment. SABC has 75 years in the game, and they are the public broadcaster. Maybe let me start on the... What is the nature of the conversation? The phone call was between the president and President Trump. So but the principle is that the room for engagement it's there, and the president continues to engage. And you'll recall that in May he led is it May or April? May he led the delegation to Washington to open that room for negotiation. And it's from that meeting, the working visit, that there was an assurance that as soon as we reach a deal, then there will be a review of the tariffs. And then, so there's nothing new in that. That's why, otherwise, if there was no prospect for a review, there will not be need for a continuous engagement. So we continue to engagement because there's always prospect for review. And we're not the only country that is in that position. We are part of the others. And then you said the China package, is it coincidental or is it part of the diversification? You'll recall that last year when the president undertook a state visit to China on the sidelines of the FOCAC engagement, and China then upgraded South Africa's status to a level of a strategic partner of China, which then meant they were going to revise our economic relations, including improvements in trade. And even then, we had outlined that part of that arrangement included these 100 products that we need to do. But we needed to come back and finalize that whole package to say what does it mean and its essence, what it does. So it's on the back foot of that. It's on following up to that, and that's why the deputy president also went to make sure that work gets taken forward, because we cannot afford to wait. But it also supports the diversification of our economy. China is one of the most populated country in the world, and therefore, if we can get our products consumed in China, it will mean that we crack a big market, and they are very important. That's why it's important for us to have a dedicated package, and that's what we have proposed to them, and we continue to work. I'm sure when Minister Steenhuisen briefs in terms of the diversification and how far we've gone, it will indicate the products that are now going through to the Chinese market. And then the other related question to that is that we indicated that United States have indicated full participation. So the underlying word or operative word is full. They were participating, but they were not participating in full. We need to all remember that the next president of the G20 is the United States of America. So they must take over from South Africa. So this is part of preparing for them to also take over. So that's why they're full. So, and the related question you asked is whether this undersecretary is the undersecretary of the Foreign Secretary Rubio. Remember, G20 is not foreign affairs. It's across the stream. It's finance, it's women, it's youth, it's all sectors that are participating. There are a number of working groups and task forces, so the relevant ones will participate at those relevant settings. And then the Russian ship docking, I do not know, but it is also not part of the cabinet discussion. The CEO of IDT, I will not. It was not part of cabinet discussion, but I'm aware that Minister McPherson is briefing later today on that matter, because he's the line minister responsible for that, and on whether the special envoy Mr. Mcebisi Jonas has visited the U.S. I think we must stick to the word of Minister Lamola as the minister responsible for international relations. He's best placed to articulate on that. On the illegal mining, yes, the impact on the economy is very devastating. If you check the reports that we have been giving, not only on safety and security, but also the impact of the economy, because then we need to know where is the ore that is being mined there going to, and we say losses in tax that the country forgoes because that whatever is mined, whichever ore is taken out, is not accounted for tax purposes. So SARS is losing a very serious income. Secondly, the people, the damage that is done to the environment with those mines, in particular the underground mines, the instability that it causes. You'll recall that I think it was last year when the city of Joburg had an explosion because of the movement of illegal miners underneath who cut a wrong cable. And not only the inner city, but also on the M1, there was a fire around that because that's the damage to the country's infrastructure, causes economic setback for the country. But on a security level, those people carry high caliber weapons, which they don't only use underground, but they also use in the communities where they reside themselves and threaten women, threaten the security of the communities where they found themselves. You'll recall, like I think it was last year, when we indicated a number of people who were shot, not because they were directly, it was aimed at them, but stray bullets that attacked them. But you will also recall the rape of women in the country by those illegal miners which happened in the Gauteng, in the border of Gauteng and the Northwest Province. So that's why we continue and intensify the work of Operation Valam Godi to make sure that no holdings remain unattended to, but also the criminal elements move out. But we need to also assure South Africans that the Department of Mineral Resources and Petroleum are looking and started to train artisanal mining to make sure that the mines that remain with ore that is not productively economic for big mining companies to mine, but artisanal mining can be used, will then be deployed to mine in those mines, so that they can be an economic livelihood from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the comprehensive responses. Colleagues, let's take the online questions. I suspect some might repeat themselves, but we'll read them for the record. Ishmael Soleimale, read them for us.
Thank you, Mr. Valoi. I'll start with Dennis Delport from Network 24. Minister, the Department of Defense recently undertook a charter flight to Cuba for a graduation ceremony. The charter flight allegedly cost the department 34 million rand. What does the presidency make of this wasteful expenditure? And is the presidency working on ways in consultation with the minister to tighten the grip on the Department of Defense expenses? The second question from Dennis: is Cabinet hopeful that an agreement will be reached with President Trump to reduce the tariff hike? Next question, Siphelele Dudla, Business Report. Who is leading South Africa's negotiation team on the framework deal with the US? And where are the negotiations taking place? Are there physical meetings in Washington, or are they on visual platforms? The last question from Siphelele: when was the last meeting of the negotiating teams from both countries? We have two questions from Terence Creamer, Engineering News. Minister, can you indicate whether President Trump confirmed yesterday that the 30% tariff will be implemented on 8 August and remain in place unless and until a new deal is struck with South Africa? Can you say what verbal agreement was reached between Presidents Ramaphosa and Trump regarding the modalities for further negotiations and the timeline for reaching a new trade deal? We have Jan Cronje, News 24. Minister, could Cabinet say whether Kenneth Brown, the newly announced interim board chair of the Road Accident Fund, is the previous Treasury official who serves on the board of the Development Bank of South Africa? We have a question from John Elgon, New York Times. what is Cabinet's position on whether South Africa needs to consider making changes to its equity laws like BEE and the Expropriation Act in an effort to get a trade deal with the Trump administration? We have questions from Arthur Pulse from Hub FM in Cape Town. Minister, the ANC Secretary General, Mr. Mbalula, said the USA can impose sanctions against the party leaders or government, but the country won't abandon its transformation policies. What do you make of these comments made by Mr. Mbalula, and with the government disregard transformation policies to strike a deal with the US? And the last questions are from Ananias Ndlovu from the National Press Club News, Wire for Community Media. Minister, as G20 discussions move forward towards the final declarations, how is South Africa ensuring that the unique developmental challenges of both rural and urban communities, such as access to basic services, infrastructure gaps, and economic inclusions, are reflected in the G20 agenda, particularly within the frameworks of climate resilience and sustainable development financing? That's all for now, Mr. Baloi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. At the end of the questions, you can also close and adjourn the briefing. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. I need to remind us that this is not the briefing of the presidency, this is the briefing of post-cabinet. So the cabinet was not briefed on the defense trip to Cuba, so that question must be directed to the Minister of Defense. Is cabinet confident of that agreement will be reached with the United States of America as it relates to tariffs? We will not be putting efforts in the negotiations if we were not hopeful, like you said, that cabinet that there is room to reach an agreement. And I must also clarify on this matter. Somebody has sent me a message to say the people think it's 30,000 jobs in the agricultural sector. No. The estimation, which is not yet final, is around across all sectors. And we, like the question that was raised earlier, we are working on the modeling to determine the exact impact as the companies come through, to say what is the total number of jobs that will be affected and how many of those jobs will be able to save from the diversification and the localization inputs, as we have mentioned in the in the statement. Whether I can confirm whether President Trump has indicated that the reciprocal tariffs will be implemented on 8th of August. That is the date that is there. We'll await for the U.S. To communicate what is their position, but we are working to make sure we strike a deal. Of course, the deal will not be reached today, so we'll await any decision from the other side. And the other question is whether President Ramaphosa and Trump agreed on the modalities for further negotiation and timeline for reaching a trade deal. Our president has been committed to reaching a deal as quick as possible, and it's for that reason that even when we went to the working visit in Washington, we went with a proposal that the U.S. had to respond to, and we have been engaging continuously until where we are now. In terms of those engagement, and we will prefer a deal as soon as possible. And who is leading the negotiations? Of course, is the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, supported by the other ministers in the economic cluster who are there actively there. It's the Minister of Agriculture, but you also have the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation as the primary diplomat of the country. And whether the negotiations are physical meetings in Washington or virtual colleagues, honestly. Of course, there will be need for some meetings will be physical, some meetings will be virtual. It's a variety of how you meet the quickest you can meet. Some discussions will be telephonic and so forth. Let's not go down to that level. The issue is that there are engagements that are going on. There's a team, South Africa, that is engaging. The team is led by Minister Tau, supported by Minister Lamula and other ministers in the economic sector, and overall is led by the president, who engaged with President Trump from time to time on those matters. There's Mr. Kenneth Brown, who is appointed as the chairperson of the board of RAF. I don't think it's fair to expect me to have profiles of people that are here. You can go and check. I'm sure RAF will put this profile on the website, because the expectation that I'll be carrying profiles of where the people previously worked is really unfair on me. And whether we'll change our laws to make a deal with the USA, we need to be very clear that the transformation agenda of the country is non-negotiable, because that transformation agenda is not for the sake of its own. It's to make sure that we build an equal, united, and prosperous South Africa. There have not been any law in this country that have been adopted by the Democratic Parliament since 1994 that has been made to be punitive. The laws that have been adopted in this country and passed by Parliament and accented to by various presidents of the Republic have always been meant in the best interest of South Africa, South Africans, and its economy, its social cohesion, its stability, and the overall well-being of our people. If any laws have to be changed, they will be changed in the interest of South Africa and its prosperity. Unless the courts of the Republic of South Africa instruct that those laws contradict the Constitution of the Republic, or they do not meet or satisfy the constitutional requirements of the Republic, as we are a constitutional democracy, then those laws will be changed for that purpose, or there will be amendments as we continue to make amendments to various laws to promote the impact that we need to achieve, and to also come into line with developments that are critical in the interest of South Africa. And by so doing, I've also answered the other question that has been required to say what is our position. Our position is that the transformation agenda of the country is not for its own sake, it's for the prosperity, well-being, and unity of the Republic of South Africa and South Africans. As we close, we want to remind South Africans to be mindful of the inclement weather and to be cautious. We are now informed that there have been an accident or two accidents on the N1, one from Polokwane to Mokopane, due to the slipperiness of the roads given the hailstorms. So we are requesting that as we get in the roads, let's exercise highest vigilance and highest cautions so that we preserve lives, but also so that we can all get home safely and avoid unnecessary delays. As we're speaking, there are road closures due to the collisions on the roads. So we are reminding all South Africans to be mindful of the inclement weather and take precaution to avoid collision, loss of lives, and to make sure that we can continue to operate with minimal delays and disruptions that may be caused by recklessness on the roads. Thank you very much. You must have a lovely long weekend. But to the women of South Africa, as we mark and commemorate the resilience of the women of the 1956 march, we want you to emulate their steps. And we are aware that we are confronted with difficulties of gender-based violence and femicide, but we must work together to protect women and children, not only as women, but also as the South African society. The efforts of the women of the 1956 march cannot go in vain. We need to build an inclusive society, an equal society, and a prosperous society for all South Africans, women, youth, and the previously disadvantaged. South Africa can only prosper if there is equity and equality for all. Thank you.
This then brings us to the end of this briefing, and the briefing is adjourned. Thank you very much.